Patch 8.2 Rise of Ashara is here. That means there's a host of new gear to acquire and a new power ceiling to clamor for. This time around, though, we have much more interesting gear and new ways to acquire it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Patch 8.2 video. This time we are going to be talking about gearing up when the patch drops. Now unfortunately, in real life your gear does not impact your stats, but I'll tell you what does: Skillshare. Skillshare are an online learning community with over 25,000 courses in design, business, productivity and more, all for only $10 a month with their premium annual subscription, though you get the first 2 months for free if you follow the link down in the video description. Now there's one course that I really want you to check out. It's one by one of my favorite YouTubers, Thomas Frank. His course, Productivity Masterclass, condenses years of learning into a single course, and it is just incredibly good at giving you a list of actionable improvements, things you can just go and do. I cannot recommend it enough, and you can get it for free through my link in the description below. So, big thank you to Skillshare for supporting this channel and the team behind it, and let's get into the video. First of all, the item level situation. At the launch of this patch, the item level ceiling will remain the same at 425. This will go up to 455 when Season 3 starts, 2 weeks after 8.2 launches. However, this does not mean that this patch is slow to start, as you can begin grabbing gear from the new zones immediately. Even if you're already 415 plus, some of the gear available right off the bat could be quite important for you generally in this patch, thanks to the effects that the gear has and the concurrent gearing paths that Blizzard have designed for this patch. So if that's the case, what should you do on day one? Well, the first place to go on your 8.2 travels is Nazjatar, and there's a lot to do when you're down there. Your gearing in Nazjatar itself is through benthic gear, which Blizzard is testing out as an alternative form of gear progression. They have done currency-based catch-up before, of course, but recently that's been mostly random and fairly limited in power. This time, though, it is a way to get almost heroic level gear just by doing content in the world and returning every day to efficiently acquire yourself some mana pearls. So, mana pearls are the currency of Nazjatar, and you can spend them to upgrade your benthic gear from 385 all the way up to 425, which is 5 item levels below heroic raid gear. You'll get a piece of benthic gear as soon as you go down, and the initial 385 benthic gear tokens are quite widely available, which is really quite important because there are many different varieties of gear there. So the tokens draw from a fixed pool, so you want to make sure that you know what pieces you want for your class before you start pouring mana pearls into upgrading them. Now, on the topic of mana pearls, well, there are many more uses for them than just the benthic gear, so you might want to strategize and preserve your mana pearls where you can. So you'll need to spend them on Azerite essences, and then if you want, mounts, pets, and some other miscellaneous things. Personally, I would recommend checking out the class Discord posts for an idea of what you should be going for your own class and planning that ahead of time. But in all honesty, it shouldn't really matter too much, just, common sense should do it. The effects are fairly cut and dry, and you really should know what you want when you see it, but still, I'd recommend checking out the class Discords. Now, as a quick example, if you are choosing the bracers that you want to upgrade and keep throughout the patch, well, you've got 4 effects to choose from: a chance of damaging and slowing attackers when attacked, a chance to summon a pufferfish that explodes for AoE damage, a 5% increased swim speed in Nazjatar, or being able to find more items connected to the Nazjatar ecosystem. That means the items you pick up for buffs and bounties. Now, these are all unique bits of gear that have fixed stats, so you want to take those into account as well. As an example, the plate swim speed benthic bracers are haste versatility. So, how do you actually go about getting your mana pearls? Well, it's really simple. Just do all the content in Nazjatar that you can. Do everything, all the time, every day. Kill rares, complete world quests, complete bounties, do the events, basically everything you can in the world. The mana pearls are similar in design to Argonite or Nether Shards, which means you can get a decent chunk of them every daily reset, but once that initial wave drives up, there's really not a super lucrative way to farming them, so you really just want to avoid trying to farm them up. Overall though, almost no matter what type of player you are, one of the most reliable and effective ways of gearing up with this patch is going to be upgrading your benthic gear. Now, there is one particular downside to upgrading benthic gear, though. You might spend a few days, unlocking a piece of benthic gear, leveling it up a bit, only for a lucky Titan Forge to occupy that slot. So my advice would be to, if you're not sure, upgrade slowly and surely rather than pushing individual pieces up to 415. Or you could maybe keep in mind what bits of gear you're likely to get. So, take a look at the Eternal Palace loot tables. There's no point in spending mana pearls on something just for the short term. So, for example, if you're spending mana pearls on a slot that maybe drops from the first boss of the new raid and you're doing heroic progression, then it really doesn't make much sense to get or to focus on benthic gear for that slot. Now, to cap off mana pearl expenditure in general, there is one last thing that is worth mentioning, and that is crafted gear. So higher level crafted gear does not really work like it does currently in BFA, requiring raid specific materials. Instead, the raid like gear, which is 410, 425, and 440, requires upgrading something in Nazjatar called the Abyssal Forge. So currently the first upgrade requires spending 75 mana pearls and allows for a 410 BOP bit of gear to be crafted. The next two upgrades do require, though, eternal ornaments. They are from raid bosses in the Eternal Palace, and they will allow for the higher level crafting. So that's it for Nazjatar. Benthic gear and mana pearls. That's what you're doing there. Next, though, let's talk about Mckagan. Mckagan's gearing is complementary to Nazjatar's gearing rather than being in opposition. Mckagan will provide you with rings and trinkets where Nazjatar won't, so if you want to gear, you're going to have to spend a bit of time in both. Mckagan doesn't have an awful lot of gear by itself, though, with the focus of that zone being more the cosmetics and self-driven stuff. However, you will want to get your pocket-sized computation device. That is a trinket that has 3 slots for punch cards, which are items that you'll get while playing in Mckagan, as well as rewards from the dungeon. As for how to target these, well, you'll get plenty as you go, and it'll really just be a matter of figuring out which ones really work for the build that you want to run with. So, like gems, these are destroyed when replaced, so you might want to get a stock of them if you're going to be experimenting or swapping specs a lot. So the red slot has interesting procs, like self-healing, haste procs, things like that, whereas the yellow slot provides flat stats, and the blue one provides out-of-combat bonuses, like swim speed or tracking mechanical creatures. These mostly come from fixed sources in Mckagan, both the zone and the dungeon, so they should be fairly easy to target if you need a specific one. You can also craft Adventurer's Augments in Mckagan via the zone's crafter, Pascal, who you'll get in the intro sort of quests to the zone. Now, they are random spec-specific rings and trinkets. They're made using Mckagan's crafting regents once you have enough rep. Basically, if you want to hit somewhere around 420 without stepping a foot in instance content between the benthic gear and that stuff in Mckagan, you pretty much can do it in this patch. Honestly, it's not even something that's only there for people who want to stay out of instance content, though. It does provide concurrent gearing as well as an alternative one. So, if you log in on an off night and your Mythic Plus group isn't online, there still is a lot of genuine progress on your character that you can make through, solo play or group play, because you can, of course, do this stuff with friends and it will be a bit faster. I think this is especially relevant for the first few weeks of the patch because, of course, Season 3 will not kick off for another 2 weeks. But what actually happens when Season 3 kicks off 2 weeks after the patch? Well, that's when the more traditional gearing kicks in. So Operation Mckagan, which is the Mega Dungeon and the Eternal Palace, will open up, and then, of course, your Mythic Plus and PvP rewards will scale up appropriately. It seems like Cultras and Zandalar rewards will not scale up, as the new zones effectively do replace old content. So really that means that once Season 3 launches, you're just going right back into the usual. You are pushing your weekly Mythic Plus key as far as you can, and then you're just clearing your chosen difficulty of the Eternal Palace, if that's something that you do, all while continuing to make progress in Nazjatar and clearing Operation Mckagan. If you are a PvPer, it's just business as usual. Kill boys in the arena, get some chests. There's still no PvP vendor. Sadly, yeah, no overhauls there, but hey, it is what it is. You can still avail of the solo gearing stuff. So overall, the whole process is just a bit more involved than praying for Titan Forges. You'll want to use raid bots or class resources to find out what you should be aiming for with the more interesting effects on items and a way to shore up specific item slots through solo play with benthic gear and Mckagan crafting. I overall think it does come to make a far better gearing process than what we've seen so far in Battle for Azeroth. And then, of course, you still have things like Titan Residuum sticking with the game. Now, while the Eternal Palace and Operation Mckagan do have a lot of fun items, there is one thing in particular I want to bring some attention to, and that is the bit bands on logic loops. These are a unique collection of rings from Operation Mckagan, and they work as a set, as a simple if-then condition. So the logic loops contain an if, right? That's a unique effect. So if you hit the same, the same target with 3 different abilities, or if you heal a target who is below 50% health. So those are 2 examples there. Now, they do nothing in isolation, but if you then get a bit band, the bit bands contain the then effect. And these are things like dealing damage to a nearby enemy or gaining a shield. These provide you with some pretty fun customization, and it's very clear that, yeah, sure, most melee DPS will want the if you deal damage to an enemy from behind logic loop, and the then you gain haste for 15 seconds, or then you deal nature damage to a nearby enemy bit band. However, if your group needs a little bit more healing, well, maybe the DPS players could replace their bit bands from a damage dealing one to a then you heal injured allies one instead. They're not incredibly powerful or unique in their own right, but I think it definitely is a fun and flavorful part of gearing that we haven't really seen before. This will definitely incentivize preparation-heavy players to run Operation Mckagan regularly so they have access to this kind of gearing tool. The more rings you have, then the more tools you'll have access to, so I'd recommend just keeping an eye out for those, maybe they'll be able to help you. Then as for the crafted gear, well, there's not really too much else to add. I already mentioned that you'll need to restore the Abyssal Focus in Nazjatar to craft gear, costing 75 mana pearls, so 410 is the basic cap there until you start getting the raiding things to upgrade the Abyssal Forge. Really, long gone are the days of relying on crafted gear to, gear up, except for maybe bolstering your own supply of gear a little bit. Most of the current gems and enchants, though, on the topic of gearing, well, they will be superseded on patch day because there's pretty much a reset of the crafting stuff with, new gems to mine and then new gems to socket into your gear that are a little bit more powerful than the old ones that you will have been used to, and the same goes for things like enchants. And then really there's one last major thing to talk about here, that's your Heart of Azeroth. So on patch day, you'll be able to start acquiring the new Heart of Azeroth essences. It will take a little bit of testing and research to figure out exactly what ones you'll want to prioritize. That will depend on your spec balance. Luckily enough, though, these sources are very distinct, they are very direct, and they often do tie into other progression that you'll be doing anyway. Now, I generally wouldn't recommend massively rushing a specific essence, as they just kind of do come from a result of gearing in other areas. But saying that, your mileage will vary, as with all aspects of character power. You do want to keep an eye on the class communities, the discords, guides. You want to use tools like raid bots, because it could just be, for your spec, a particular essence is super powerful. It's probably worth, in my opinion, getting rank 1 of as many of them basically as soon as you can to make sure that you're ready, and then focusing going sort of deep on them after that. So that basically will mean you'll be doing a little bit of everything in terms of content. Now, some of them do rely on Season 3 content, so you won't really be able to rush full progression instantly, but making progress on getting rank 2 and rank 3 of your essences, that is going to be a vital part of gearing in this patch, even though it's not gear, and it definitely will be something that you will want to do when the sources of gear or other progress have dried up in the game. For me, I know I'll be spending a lot of time in Mckagan to upgrade the Vision of Perfection, which is, of course, the Azerite essence that affects your class abilities. Well, your class-like main cooldown, basically. So, to put this into a bullet point list, in Nazjatar, get mana pearls to upgrade your benthic gear. In Mckagan, get your rep up so you can craft adventure, augment, rings, and trinkets, and fill up your punch card trinket slots as well. For Mythic Plus, same as usual, just push your key every week. For PvP, same as usual, push your raiding, play as much as you can. For Operation Mckagan, just go in there, have some fun in the dungeon, and get yourself some logic loops and bit bands. For the Eternal Palace, just go in, kill some bosses in whatever difficulty, and hopefully get some of the genuinely quite cool and unique items that are inside there. And then for the Heart of Azeroth, generally it's just play the game. Tooltip over the essences in the essence menu, it tells you where they come from, so that should incentivize you to explore parts of the game that you really haven't before to fill up the essence list. Some of the abilities and effects are actually quite fun to play with, and I think the power fantasy's actually been pretty well realized with it. So on paper, it does just look like they've bolted a bunch of new things on, but in terms of the design of these concurrent gearing systems, well, it will just mean that there's going to be a lot for just about all types of player to do. Overall, this is quite a fundamental change in attitude towards gearing at a high level, and it's definitely an experiment from Blizzard. I'm going to be trying to gear up a few different characters in this patch in sort of different ways to see what it ultimately feels like, because this really could be a bold new direction for World of Warcraft's endgame, one that somewhat like just combines past and present to create something that may be new. As you play, be sure to just think about just how do you feel about these systems, you know? Like the new Benthic gear, do you prefer that to Arcanite and the randomness and the Titan Forging? I'd really love to hear. I think no matter what you feel, be sure to provide feedback to Blizz in this one. Between Nazjatar and Mckagan and all these different gearing systems and all the different item effects, it's super clear that they are running so many experiments with this patch, probably because BFA came out and they probably got really worried. And now in 8.2, we see a lot of new ideas and experiments that probably will influence the future if they go down well, so be sure to let Blizz know what you think. And basically, that is my guide of gearing up in this patch. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you found this useful, and with that, I will see you next time.